The sun was slowly dropping behind the far hills when Luke Carson rode back toward his ranch. His horse moved at a steady pace, dust rising with each step. It had been a long day, full of work and quiet thought, and Luke was ready to rest. He planned to take off his boots, eat something simple, and sit on his porch for a few minutes before night settled in. That was all he wanted. But life, as he knew well, did not always follow plans. As he reached the dirt road that led to the town's small station, he noticed a wagon parked near the platform. A few people stood around, talking in low voices. Luke was not the kind of man who involved himself in town gossip, so normally he would have ridden past without stopping. But something felt strange today, like the air carried a tension he could not explain. Then he saw her. A young woman stood next to a small, worn suitcase. Her hands were tightly clasped together, and her shoulders were stiff with worry. She had a tired look, like someone who had spent too many days on the road and too many nights with little rest. Her dress was neat but simple, and her dark hair was tied back in a way that showed she tried to appear presentable. She looked around with hopeful eyes that slowly dimmed as she realized someone important was missing. Luke slowed his horse. He recognized her situation immediately. The town had been whispering for months that his neighbor, Mark Holden, had ordered himself a bride through an agency far away. People said he wanted a young woman who would work hard, respect him, and never argue. Luke always thought it sounded cold. Marriage wasn't something to buy like a new plow or a mule. But now, seeing this woman standing alone, Luke felt a knot form in his chest. She looked lost. Not the kind of lost where a person simply doesn't know where to go, but the deeper kind where a person questions if they even belong anywhere at all. Before he could think any further, Mark Holden appeared from behind the wagon. His face was red, like he had been drinking, or like he was irritated even before he started speaking. He approached the woman with a pace that showed impatience, not excitement. Luke watched silently. Mark looked the woman up and down, not in a polite or respectful way, but as though he was inspecting something he might return to a store. The woman tried to smile. "Hello? I am Elena," she said in careful English, her accent soft but clear. She reached for her papers, offering them to him with shaking hands. Mark did not even take them. "You're not what I expected," he muttered. Elena blinked, unsure what he meant. "The letters? The photos? I traveled far. You are Mark Holden." "Yes?" Mark shook his head sharply. "No. This is not gonna work." He raised his voice, louder than necessary. "I thought you'd be different, taller, or maybe prettier. I don't know. But this isn't right." Elena's face fell, confusion turning slowly into fear. "But I came all this way, alone. You wrote me." "I changed my mind," Mark said flatly. "Not my problem anymore." He walked toward his wagon, climbed up, and took the reins in hand. Elena stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please. I don't know anyone here. I have no place." "Not my fault," Mark snapped. This was a waste of time. And without waiting for another word, he flicked the reins and began to ride away. The small group of townspeople watched silently, their expressions mixed, some surprised, some uncomfortable, others pretending not to care. No one moved to help the woman now standing alone. Everyone except Luke. He felt a sharp, heavy ache inside him as he watched the scene. He had seen unfair things before, but something about this moment made his blood run hot. Maybe it was the way Mark had spoken to her. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, a mixture of shame and fear that no person deserved to feel. Luke nudged his horse forward. He stopped a few feet away from her and gently tipped his hat. "Ma'am," he said softly. "Are you all right?" Elena swallowed hard and tried to nod, but tears formed in her eyes faster than she could blink them away. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. I do not know," she whispered. "He left," I thought he would take me. I thought I would start a new life. Luke climbed down from his horse, keeping his movements slow and calm so she wouldn't feel scared. My name is Luke Carson. I live just a couple miles from here. He paused for a moment. Do you have anywhere to stay tonight? Elena shook her head. Her voice was small. No. I used all my money for the travel. I have only this suitcase. Luke glanced at the sky. The sun was almost gone, and night was coming quickly. He looked back at her. You shouldn't be out here alone. It's not safe. And it's getting cold. Elena lowered her eyes. I don't want to cause trouble. You're not causing trouble. Luke said gently. You didn't do anything wrong. Luke. 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 She looked at him again, meeting his eyes for the first time with a searching expression. She was trying to judge if he was a threat or a good man. She had no reason to trust anyone, but she also had no other choice. Luke stepped back to give her space. You can stay at my ranch for the night, he offered. I have a spare room. I'll make sure you have food and a safe place to rest. After that, we can figure something out. Her lips parted slightly. He could see she was frightened but also exhausted beyond words. Why? She asked quietly. Luke shrugged, his voice steady. Because you need help, and because what happened to you wasn't right. For a long moment, Elena said nothing. Then, very slowly, she nodded. Luke took her suitcase and placed it carefully on the horse. When she hesitated about climbing up behind him, he walked beside her and said, We'll walk. It's not far, and the fresh air might help. They walked side by side, the quiet evening wrapping around them. Elena held onto her small shawl as the wind brushed past. She looked around at the open land, the soft colors of sunset fading into deeper shades. The world felt bigger than before, too big for someone carrying so much fear on her shoulders. Luke kept a respectful distance. He spoke only when she seemed comfortable. Where are you from? He asked gently. From a small town far away from here, she answered. Life was hard. My family thought, maybe I could have a better future here. I also thought so. Luke listened without interrupting. She spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. Mark wrote many letters, she continued. He said he wanted a wife with a strong heart, someone who could build a home with him. I thought, maybe he meant it. Maybe, Luke nodded. Elena gave a small, sad smile. I thought I would come to a place where people are kind. You're not wrong, Luke said quietly. There are kind folks here. You just didn't meet the right ones today. When they reached his ranch, the light from his porch lantern made the place look warm and welcoming. Elena looked at it like it was a shelter she never expected to find. Luke opened the door and stepped aside. You're safe here. Inside, the house was simple but clean. A wooden table, 2 chairs, a fireplace, and shelves lined with tools and books. It was a home built by a quiet man who lived an honest life. Luke showed her the spare room. The bed was neatly made. The window looked out onto the ranch, and everything smelled faintly of wood and fresh air. You can rest here, he said. If you need anything, just knock. Elena touched the edge of the bedspread, as if unsure if she was really allowed to be there. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You are very kind. Luke smiled faintly. Anyone would do the same. But they both knew that wasn't true. Many people had seen her standing alone at the station. Only Luke came forward. As he stepped out of the room, Elena sat on the edge of the bed and let out a deep, shaky breath. For the first time since her long journey began, she didn't feel completely alone. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But right now, she was safe. And without knowing it, that single moment, the moment Luke offered help, was the start of a story neither of them could have imagined. Elena woke early the next morning, long before the sun reached the windows of Luke's ranch house. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. She sat up slowly, her hands touching the soft blanket and the pillow that smelled of clean cotton and wood. Everything was quiet, except for the distant sound of horses moving in their stalls. When the memories of yesterday came back, the station, the rejection, the long walk, her chest tightened. But then she remembered something else. She remembered Luke's calm voice, his respectful distance, and his promise that she was safe here. She stood and walked to the window. The land outside was peaceful. A soft gray morning light lay over the fields, and a gentle breeze shook the grass. It felt like a different world compared to the crowded places she had traveled through. She stepped into the main room, expecting to find Luke inside. Instead, she found a folded note on the kitchen table, beside a cup, a pot of warm tea, and a plate of fresh bread and butter. The note said, "I'm outside with the horses. Please eat something. You're a guest here." Elena touched the paper with a small smile. She poured tea into the cup and sipped it slowly. The warmth spread through her, calming her nerves. It felt strange to be in a home again. A real home, where no one shouted at her or told her she wasn't enough. After she finished eating, she stepped outside. Luke was by the corral, checking one of the horses' saddles. When he turned and saw her, his expression softened. He gave her a polite nod. "Good morning." "Good morning," she said quietly. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he replied. "I figured you'd be hungry after all the traveling." Elena watched him for a moment. Luke was strong in a quiet way. He didn't show off, didn't talk too much, and didn't crowd her. He simply worked with a steady focus that made her feel comfortable. "Can I help with something?" she asked. Luke shook his head lightly. "You don't have to work. Not until you're rested." "I feel better," she said. "I want to help. I cannot sit all day." Luke considered this. He didn't want her to feel like she needed to earn her place. But he also understood the feeling. When a person works, they feel more stable inside. Finally, he nodded. "All right, if you want to, you can help with the animals." Elena smiled for the first time since arriving. "I would like that." Luke handed her a small bucket and showed her how to scatter feed for the chickens. At first, she was unsure, but as the birds gathered around her feet and pecked at the ground, she let out a small laugh. It surprised even her. She had not heard her own laughter in many days. Luke looked at her, noticing it. Her laughter was soft and warm, like something delicate returning to the world after being hidden for a long time. He felt something shift inside him, something gentle, but he pushed it aside. She was still hurt, still finding her place. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. After the chickens, they went to the goat pen. Elena watched Luke work, learning everything step by step. She had worked on farms before, so it didn't take long for her to understand his routine. "You're a fast learner," he said casually. She shrugged with a smile. "In my home, we worked with animals. Not like here, but a little." Luke nodded. "It shows." The morning passed quietly. Luke explained how the ranch worked, how he grew hay, how he cared for the horses, how he rode into town once a week for supplies. Elena listened carefully, asking small questions in her soft voice. She wanted to understand everything, and Luke found himself liking her curiosity. At noon, they rested on the porch. Luke brought her a glass of cool water and sat a comfortable distance away, leaning on one of the wooden beams. "You're settling in all right?" he asked. Elena looked down at her hands. "I think so. I still feel not sure about everything. But it is peaceful here." Luke smiled slightly. "You can stay as long as you need. No rush." Her eyes softened with relief. "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." Luke didn't reply right away. He just watched the land stretching out before them. Wide, open, free. Then he said, "No one should be left alone like that. Not after coming so far. Elena looked out at the ranch. Back home, she said, people would sometimes leave without saying goodbye. But still, I did not think it would happen here. Not with a marriage. Luke sighed. Mark's not a good man. He always cared more about himself than anyone else. Elena hugged her knees lightly. I thought he wanted a wife. I thought he wanted a partner. He wanted someone he could control, Luke said quietly. Elena felt the truth in those words. She didn't like to think badly of people, but she also knew she had been treated wrongly. Later that afternoon, Elena asked if she could help prepare dinner. Luke agreed. Inside the kitchen, she moved confidently, mixing ingredients from her home with simple things from Luke's pantry. He watched from across the table, curious and impressed. You cook well, he said. In my home, we cooked for many people, she replied modestly. I learned to make food that tastes good, even when we didn't have much. Luke liked listening to her stories. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice held warmth, as if she was letting him see a small part of her past. When they finished eating, Elena stood up to wash the dishes. Luke stepped forward. You've done enough today. I'll get them. She shook her head gently. Please, let me do this. It makes me feel normal. Luke stepped back and let her work, understanding more than she realized. As evening approached, a storm began to form. Dark clouds gathered over the sky, and the wind grew stronger. Elena stiffened as thunder rumbled in the distance. Her breathing quickened. Luke noticed immediately. Something wrong? She shook her head quickly, but her hands trembled. Where I come from, storms were very bad. We lost things we could never get back. I still feel afraid. With there. In 10. Luke stepped closer, but not too close. His voice stayed warm and steady. You're safe here. This house is strong. The storm won't hurt you. Elena tried to believe him, but when the thunder cracked louder, she covered her ears and closed her eyes. Her breath came too fast, and Luke could see panic rising in her. Hey, he said softly. It's all right. He guided her toward the fireplace and lit a small lantern. The warm glow filled the room, soft and steady. It helped calm her a little. Just sit, Luke said gently. I'll stay right here. Until it passes. Elena nodded, her breath shaky. She sat near the fire, her hands wrapped tightly around her arms. Luke pulled up a chair and sat across from her, keeping his presence calm and protective without crowding her. They sat like that for almost an hour, while rain hammered the roof and thunder rolled across the sky. Slowly, Elena's fear eased. Her shoulders relaxed, and her breaths became steadier. You okay now? Luke asked quietly. Elena opened her eyes and looked at him with deep gratitude. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize, he said gently. Everyone carries something. Elena studied his face, the quiet strength in his eyes, the steady kindness in his voice. She had never met a man like him before. A man who offered help without expecting anything. A man who respected her space. A man who made her feel safe simply by being in the same room. When the storm finally weakened, Luke stood. If you need anything tonight, just knock. I'll hear you. Elena nodded. I trust you. Those words caught Luke by surprise. Trust was something rare, something people usually guarded carefully, especially someone who had been hurt. But she said it without hesitation, without fear. A small, warm weight settled in Luke's chest. He didn't show it, but he felt it deeply. As Elena returned to her room, Luke watched her walk quietly down the hall. He felt a strange sense of responsibility, not because she was weak, but because she deserved better than what life had given her so far. And he wanted to make sure she found it here, even if he didn't yet understand what that meant. That night, both of them went to sleep with new thoughts they had not expected. to have thoughts about safety, kindness, hope, and the quiet beginning of something neither one of them planned for. For the next several days, the ranch settled into a peaceful rhythm. Elena worked beside Luke in small ways, helping where she could, learning more of the ranch routines, and slowly regaining her confidence. She still felt uncertain about her future, but at least she no longer felt afraid. Luke respected her space, spoke to her gently, and never pushed her into anything she wasn't ready for. Day by day, she felt herself breathing easier. But peace does not always last, especially in a small town where news travels faster than the wind. It began on a warm afternoon. Elena was in the yard feeding the goats when Luke rode into the ranch at a hurried pace. His jaw was set tight, and his expression held a seriousness she had never seen before. Elena felt her stomach tighten. Luke got down from his horse and walked toward her. "Elena," he said softly, "we need to talk." Her hands froze on the gate. "What happened?" "There's talk spreading in town," Luke said. "About you. About me." Elena's eyes widened with worry. "About us?" Luke nodded slowly. "Mark Holden has been telling people I took you from him, that you were supposed to be his wife, and I interfered." Elena's face went pale. For a moment she couldn't speak. Her voice finally came out thin and shaky. "But he abandoned me. Everyone saw it. People forget things when someone loud tells them a different story," Luke replied. Fear crept into Elena's heart. She had come to Luke's ranch thinking she was safe, but now the world outside seemed to be tightening around her again. She felt the same fear she felt on the day Mark left her standing alone. "Did they believe him?" she asked quietly. Luke sighed. "Some did. Some didn't. But enough people are talking that it's causing trouble." Elena hugged her arms tightly around herself. "I am the problem again. I didn't want this." Luke stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. "You are not the problem. You didn't do anything wrong. Mark did." Elena looked at him with watery eyes. "Why would he say such things?" "Pride," Luke answered simply. "Men like him can't accept when their wrong actions are seen by others. So he tries to blame someone else, to make himself look strong." Elena lowered her head. "I don't want people to think bad things about you." Luke shook his head. "I don't care what they think. I know the truth. And so do you." She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. But before she could calm down completely, a sound broke through the quiet. A wagon rolling fast down the dirt road. Luke and Elena both turned. Mark Holden's wagon was heading straight toward the ranch. Dust rose behind him like a storm cloud. Elena's heart thudded in her chest. Luke muttered under his breath, "I figured he'd come, sooner or later." The wagon skidded to a stop in front of the fence. Mark jumped down, his face already twisted with anger. He pointed straight at Elena. "You," he barked. "Get your things. You're coming with me." Elena stepped back, instinctively moving closer to Luke. Luke stood in front of her without hesitation. His voice was calm but strong. "She's not going anywhere with you." Mark laughed, a harsh sound. "You think you can decide that? I paid for her. She belongs to me." Elena flinched at the word. Luke's jaw tightened. "She's a person, Mark. Not something you buy." Mark stepped forward aggressively. "You stole her from me." "I didn't steal anyone," Luke answered. "You abandoned her. In front of half the town." "That was a misunderstanding," Mark yelled. "Or maybe I just changed my mind." "Doesn't matter. She still owes me." Elena shook her head, her voice trembling. "I owe you nothing. You left me alone. You said I was not what you wanted." "Don't lie," Mark snapped. "You're trying to make me look bad." Luke stepped closer, his voice low and controlled. "You made yourself look bad. Now leave." Mark looked between them, frustration boiling in his eyes. "You think the town is going to side with a stranger instead of me?" I've lived here for years. You're going to lose this fight, Luke. It's not a fight, Luke said. It's simple. She's staying here because she feels safe. You don't get to decide otherwise. Mark sneered and spat on the ground. This isn't over. People are already talking. Soon enough, they'll want her gone. And when they do, I'll be the only one willing to take her. Elena's knees nearly buckled. Luke steadied her, with a light touch on her arm. Get off my land, Luke said, voice steady as stone. Mark glared but finally turned back to his wagon. He climbed up and gave Luke one last threatening look before snapping the reins hard. The wagon rolled away, leaving silence behind. Elena felt tears rise, not from fear alone but from humiliation. She turned away quickly, not wanting Luke to see her cry. But he gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Hey, he said softly. Don't let him break you again. I don't want to cause you trouble, she whispered. You're not causing anything, Luke answered firmly. People choose what they believe. That's not on you. Elena took a shaky breath. They will think something wrong about us. Let them, Luke said. The truth always comes back around. Later that day, Luke took her into town to face the whispers rather than hide from them. When they arrived, people paused and stared. Some faces looked curious, others suspicious, and a few held sympathy. Elena felt like every step she took was watched by 100 eyes. She wanted to shrink into herself, but Luke walked beside her with his head held steady. His calm presence helped her breathe. At the general store, a woman named Mrs. Alder approached them. She was older, kind-faced, and known for being one of the few who didn't enjoy town gossip. You must be the young lady everyone's talking about, she said gently. Elena nodded nervously. Yes. Mrs. Alder smiled kindly. Pay no mind to the talk. Folks jump to stories when they don't know the truth. Elena swallowed. Mark left me. Luke helped me. That is the truth. I believe you, Mrs. Alder said without hesitation. Luke felt a small relief. Not everyone was turning against them. But soon, another voice cut through the room. Why don't you go back where you came from? A man muttered from the back. This town doesn't need trouble. Elena shrank slightly. Luke's eyes darkened, but he stayed calm. Maybe so, the man said, but she's bringing problems. Mrs. Alder clicked her tongue. The only problem here is people talking without knowing anything. The man scoffed and walked away. Elena's eyes stung, but she kept standing. Luke leaned down slightly. Proud of you, he whispered. You're stronger than you think. She blinked up at him, surprised by his words. The rest of the town visit went the same, half the people supportive, half doubtful. But Elena noticed something important. Luke never once stepped away from her. He never let her face anyone alone. When someone looked at her with judgment, he stood closer. When someone spoke kindly, he let her answer in her own voice. By the time they left town, she felt exhausted but also proud of herself. She had spoken the truth openly, something she had been afraid to do for many years. On the ride back, she looked at Luke with gratitude. Thank you, she said softly. You helped me be brave today. Luke looked ahead, the warm light of sunset touching his face. You were brave before I met you. Today, you just let the world see it. Elena felt her heart warm at those words. She realized something important. Luke was not just kind. He believed in her. That was something no one had ever done. That evening, they sat together on the porch in the quiet after sunset. The sky turned soft shades of orange and purple, and fireflies glowed near the grass. Elena hugged her knees and let the peace settle inside her. Do you think the town will accept me? She asked. Luke took a slow breath. I think the town already sees you're a good person. Some just take longer to admit it. And Mark? she whispered. He has no claim on you, Luke said softly. And he never will. Elena looked at the horizon. The land looked endless, like a place where she might actually build a life. Not one forced on her, but one chosen by her heart. For the first time since arriving, she felt the faint but steady stir of hope. Luke watched her quietly, the gentle breeze lifting her hair. He didn't say it out loud, but something inside him had changed too. He no longer saw her as a guest, or someone he was helping. He saw her as someone he cared about, someone he wanted to protect, someone he wanted to keep safe, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper. Neither of them spoke it. But the feeling grew quietly between them, strong and warm, like the glow of a small fire on a cold night. And it was only the beginning. The next days brought a calmness to Luke's ranch. The gossip in town slowly began to fade, replaced by new stories, new events, and the usual rhythm of daily life. People had said their harsh words, but in time, most of them saw the truth for themselves. Elena was not a troublemaker, nor a woman seeking attention. She was simply a person who had been wronged and was trying to find a safe place to stand. And Luke, steady, quiet, and honest, was the man who had offered her that place without hesitation. As the sun rose each morning, Elena woke with a little more hope than the day before. She worked alongside Luke, cooked small meals, and learned the land around the ranch. Each day she became more familiar with the place, more connected to the animals, more comfortable with the silence and wide sky. Luke noticed every small change in her. He saw the way her shoulders slowly relaxed, the way her voice grew steadier, the way she laughed more freely when something silly happened, like the time a goat stole her scarf and ran off with it, forcing her to chase it across the yard with laughter bubbling out of her. Luke had never heard a sound so warm. He also noticed the things she didn't say, the nervous way her eyes sometimes glanced toward the road, the moments she sat quietly at the table, as if thinking too deeply, the times she hugged her arms when she believed no one was looking. She still carried heavy memories, but they were beginning to loosen their hold. One evening, after a long day of work, Luke suggested they walk to the hill behind the barn. It was a place he went, often, when he needed to think. Elena hesitated, unsure if she should join him, but he smiled gently. "You like quiet places," he said. "I think you'd like this one." So she went with him. They walked slowly up the hill, the grass brushing their boots, the sun dipping low in the sky. When they reached the top, Elena stopped. The view stretched for miles. Fields turned golden in the fading light. Trees stood dark against the horizon, and the sky looked like a painting brushed with soft pink and orange. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Luke nodded. "Whenever life gets loud, I come up here. It reminds me what really matters." Elena glanced at him. Luke took a slow breath before answering. "Peace. Respect. Knowing you're doing the right thing, even when others don't understand." Elena looked back at the horizon. "I want that too." He smiled slightly. "You deserve it." They stood quietly for a while, listening to the wind move through the grass. It felt like the whole world paused just for them. Then Elena spoke softly. "Luke, I have been thinking. I don't know what my future should be. I don't know where I belong." Luke turned his head slightly. "You belong wherever you feel safe." She swallowed. "I feel safe here." Those words caught Luke off guard. He looked at her more fully, his eyes gentle but searching. "I'm glad you do. Well, but safety is not enough," she continued quietly. "I want to feel like I can build something, like I can choose a life, not just hide from a bad one." Luke's heart tightened, not with fear, but with something like hope. He didn't speak yet. He let her finish. "When I first came here," she said, "I thought only of survival. But now, I think of more. I think of days that feel full. I think of mornings with purpose. I think of kindness. Luke's voice was low and warm. You deserve all of that. Elena turned slightly toward him, the wind lifting her hair. Luke, I want to stay. Not because I have no place else, but because this place feels like home. And you, she paused, breath unsteady. You feel like someone I can trust with my whole heart. Luke's breath caught. He had expected her to leave someday. He had prepared himself for that. But hearing her say she wanted to stay, it felt like the weight of the world lifted from his chest. Still, he didn't step closer. He didn't rush. He respected her too much for that. Elena, he said softly, you don't owe me anything. Not your stay. Not your gratitude. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't want you here. Her eyes glistened with emotion. You have been good to me, Luke. Kind in ways I never knew someone could be. Luke finally let his feelings show, but gently. I didn't help you expecting anything. I helped you because you deserved help. But somewhere in these days, you became important to me. Era. Elena felt tears rise, not sad tears, but soft ones filled with relief, hope, and the quiet sweetness of hearing something she never thought she would hear in her life. She stepped forward then, just one small step, but enough that Luke sensed her intention. He didn't move until she stopped close enough for him to hear her steady breath. I don't want to be alone anymore, she whispered. Not when I've found someone who sees me for who I am. Luke gently reached for her hand. He didn't grab it. He simply lifted his own hand upward, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her hand reached his naturally, like it had been waiting for this moment. Their fingers touched lightly at first. Then, slowly, she intertwined hers with his. A warmth settled between them, simple, honest, real. Luke squeezed her hand gently. You're not alone, Elena. Not anymore. They stood like that as the last sun dipped below the hills. The air was cool, but neither felt cold. The moment held them both in a peaceful stillness. When they walked back to the ranch, they didn't hurry. Their hands stayed close, brushing now and then, in soft, shy touches neither tried to hide. It felt new, but not frightening. It felt natural, like something that had quietly grown between them without either of them realizing it until now. That night, Elena slept with a calm heart. For the first time since leaving her home country, she felt like she belonged somewhere, not as a guest, not as a burden, but as someone wanted. The next morning, the ranch felt different too. Luke moved with a soft happiness he didn't try to hide. Elena cooked breakfast, humming a small tune she hadn't remembered in years. Later, Luke took her to town again, not because they needed supplies, but because he wanted people to see the truth for themselves. They walked side by side through the streets. This time, Elena didn't keep her distance or lower her head, and Luke didn't walk half a step away. They moved together with quiet confidence. People noticed. Mrs. Alder smiled knowingly. The shopkeeper nodded respectfully. A few others who had doubted her now saw the truth in her calm, steady presence. Mark Holden passed them at one point. He glared, his expression tight with anger or maybe shock. Elena expected fear to rise in her, but it didn't. Not even a little. Luke stood tall beside her. She looked at Mark and spoke clearly. You do not decide my life, she said softly. And you never will. Mark said nothing. He simply walked away, swallowed by his own choices. When they returned to the ranch, Luke stopped her near the porch steps. I want to show you something, he said. He walked her to the old barn, where a small corner had been cleaned and repaired. He had been working on it quietly for days, fixing the beams, clearing the dust, laying down fresh boards. What is this? She asked. Luke smiled shyly. A place of your own, or anything you want it to be. A sewing room, a small workshop, a space for reading or painting. Whatever you like. I wanted you to have something that was yours. Elena covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. She touched the newly sanded boards. You did this? For me? Luke nodded. You're building a life here. I wanted to help you start. Elena turned to him, emotion swelling so deep it felt like her heart was overflowing. In that moment, she understood something completely. She hadn't just found a safe place. She had found love. True love, the kind that grows from kindness and honesty, not from promises or contracts. She stepped closer to Luke. Words trembled on her lips. Luke, she whispered, I choose this life. I choose this place. And I choose you. Luke didn't speak right away. His eyes softened with deep affection. You make this place feel whole, he said. And if you choose me, then that's the greatest gift I've ever been given. Elena reached out and held his hand again. This time, without hesitation, without fear. And in the warm, quiet light of the barn, they shared the beginning of a future built from trust, respect, and gentle, growing love. A love neither of them expected. A love both of them deserved.